Continuing Goosebumps by R.L. Stine, The Haunted Mask, Chapter 13. I had soccer practice for my first graders after school the next day. It was a sunny, cold October afternoon. The sunlight made the yellow and brown falling leaves glitter like gold. Puffs of white cloud floated like soft cotton across the blue sky. Everything looked beautiful to me because Halloween was only one day away. I was staring up at the clouds when Marnie rose and drop kicked the soccer ball into my stomach. I grabbed my stomach and doubled over in pain. Duck Benton and two other kids jumped on my back and drove me face down into the mud. I didn't care. In fact, I laughed because I knew that I only had one day to wait. I tried to show them how to pass. As I ran along the sidelines, Andrew Foster stuck out his foot. I tripped and went sailing into the bike rack. A handlebar caught me under the chin as I fell, and I actually saw stars. But I didn't care. I picked myself up with a grin on my face because I knew a secret. I knew an evil secret that the kids didn't know. I knew that trick-or-treat night was going to be a special treat for me. At 4 o'clock, I called an end to practice. I was too weak to blow the whistle. My clothes were soaked with mud. I walked with a limp, and I had cuts and bruises in 20 different places. A typical practice with the horrible hogs. Did I care? You know the answer. I gathered them in a circle around me. They were shoving each other and pulling hair and calling each other horrible names. I told you, they're total animals. I raised my hands to quiet them down. Let's have a special Hogs Halloween party tomorrow, I suggested. Yay, they cheered. We'll meet in our costumes after practice, I continued. The whole team, and we'll all go trick-or-treating together. I'll take you. Yay, they cheered again. So tell your parents to drop you off. I told them this is going to be our special party. We'll meet in front of the old Carpenter mansion. Silence. This time they didn't cheer. Why do we have to meet there? Andrew asked. Isn't that old house supposed to be haunted? Marnie asked softly. That place is too creepy, Duck added. I narrowed my eyes at them, challenging them. You guys aren't scared, are you? I demanded. Silence. They exchanged nervous glances. Well, are you too wimpy to meet me there? I asked. No way, Marnie insisted. No way. We're not scared of a stupid old house. They all began to tell me how brave they were. They all said they would meet me there. I saw a ghost once, Johnny Myers bragged. Behind my garage, I shouted boo, and it floated away. These kids are animals, but they have great imaginations. The other kids all started teasing Johnny. He stuck to his story. He insisted he saw a ghost. So they pushed him to the ground and got his jacket all muddy. Hey, Steve, what are you going to be for Halloween? Marnie asked. Yeah, what's your costume? Andrew demanded. He's going to be a pile of toxic waste, someone joked. No, he's going to be a ballerina, somebody else declared. They all hooted and jeered. Go ahead and laugh, guys, I thought. Have a good laugh now, because when you see me on Halloween, I'll be the only one laughing. I'm going to be a hobo, I told them. You'll recognize me. I'll be wearing a tattered old suit, and my face will be all dirty. I'll be dressed like a bum. You are a bum, one of my loyal team members shouted. More wild laughing and hooting, more shoving and hair pulling and wrestling on the ground. Luckily, their parents and babysitters showed up to take them home. I watched them go with a big smile on my face, a big evil smile. Then I grabbed up my backpack and hurried home. I ran all the way. I was eager to take another look at my mask. Chuck stepped out as I jogged past his house. Hey, Steve, what's up? He called. Not much, I called back. Later, man. I kept running. I didn't want to hang out with Chuck. I needed to check out that mask. I needed to remind myself of how awesome it was, how totally terrifying. I burst through the front door. Then I ran straight up the stairs to my room, taking the stairs 3 at a time. I raced down the hall. I turned into my room and tossed my backpack onto the bed. Then I hurried across the room to my dresser and eagerly jerked open my sock drawer. Huh? I peered inside. With a trembling hand, I shoved away several balled up pairs of socks. The mask was gone. Chapter 14. No! I began pawing frantically through the drawer, tossing all the socks onto the floor. No mask. Gone. The balled-up socks bounced all over the room. My heart was bouncing too. Then I remembered that I had moved the mask. Before school that morning, I was worried that my mom might do laundry and open my sock drawer and see it there. So I had shoved it back into the closet behind my rolled-up sleeping bag. Letting out a long whoosh of air, I dropped to my hands and knees. I quickly collected all the socks and stuffed them back into the drawer. Then I opened the closet and pulled down the mask from the top shelf. Steve, you've got to calm down, man, I told myself. It's just a Halloween mask after all. You've got to stop scaring yourself like that. Sometimes it helps to scold yourself, to give yourself advice. I started to feel a little calmer. I smoothed back the stringy yellow hair and rubbed my hand over the craggy, scab-covered skin of the mask. The brown lips sneered at me. I poked my little finger through the disgusting wormhole in the tooth. I squeezed the spiders hiding inside the ears. This is so cool, I declared out loud. I couldn't wait a whole day till Halloween. I had to show it to someone. No, I had to scare someone with it. Chuck's face popped instantly into my mind. My old friend Chuck was the perfect victim. I knew that he was home. I had seen him just a few minutes ago. Wow, will he be shocked, I told myself. Chuck thought that I ran out of the store basement empty-handed. When I sneak into his house and creep up on him wearing that disgusting mask, he'll faint. I glanced at the clock. I had an hour before dinner time. Mom and Dad weren't even home yet. Yes, I'll do it, I decided. Hee hee hee. I practiced my old man cackle. The scariest. Most evil cackle I could do. Then I gasped the wrinkled neck of the mask in both hands. Stepping in front of the mirror, I raised the mask over my head and tugged it down. It slid easily over my hair. It felt soft and warm as I pulled it over my face, down over my ears, over my cheeks, down, until I felt the top of the mask settle onto my hair. I twisted it until I could see out of the narrow eye holes. Then I lowered my hands to my sides and stepped closer to the mirror and checked myself out. So warm. I suddenly felt too warm. The rubbery mask pressed tightly against my cheeks and forehead. Warmer. Hey, I cried out as my face began to burn. So hot, so hard to breathe. Hey, what's happening to me? Chapter 15. I could feel the skin of the mask tightening around my face. My cheeks burned. A sour odor swept over me, choked me. I gagged. I sucked in a deep breath through my mouth, but the mask was so tight I could hardly breathe. I grabbed the ears with both hands. The outside of the mask felt normal, but inside I was burning up. I tried to tug the mask off, but it wouldn't slide up. The hot rubber stuck to my face. I groaned as the putrid odor washed over me again. I tugged harder. The mask didn't budge. I gasped for breath. I grabbed the stringy hair and pulled. I slid my hands under the chin and pushed. Oh, a sick groan escaped my throat. My hands dropped limply to my sides. I suddenly felt so tired, so weak, so totally weak. Every breath was a struggle. I bent over. My body began to tremble. I felt so weak and old. Old. Wow, was this how an old man felt? Calm down, Steve, I scolded myself. It's just a rubber mask. It fits a little too snug, that's all. It's stuck to your face, but you pull it off and you'll be fine. Calm down. Count to 10. Then examine the mask in the mirror. Grab it from the bottom and you'll be able to pull it up. No problem. I counted to 10. Then I stepped up close to the mirror. I nearly cried out when I saw my reflection. The mask really was awesome. So real, so gross. With my eyes staring out of it, the face seemed to come alive. The brown lips sneered back at me. When I moved my lips, they appeared to move too. The green gobs of goo trembled inside the big nostrils. The spiders appeared to be crawling through the tangled yellow hair. It's only a mask, a really cool mask, I said to myself. I started to feel a little calmer, but then a cackle escaped my throat. Not my cackle. Not in my voice. An old man's cackle. How did that happen? How did I utter such a strange sound? I clamped my lips shut. I didn't want to make that sound again. Hee hee hee, another frightening cackle, in a shrill, high-pitched voice, more like a dry croak than a laugh. I tightened my jaw, clenched my teeth, held my breath so I couldn't cackle again. Hee hee hee, I wasn't doing it. Who's cackling like that? Was where was the shrill, dry laugh coming from? I gaped at the old man in the mirror, suddenly frozen in fear, and then I felt a strong hand grab my leg. Chapter 16. With a choked gasp, I whirled around and peered down through the tight eye holes of the mask. I instantly saw that it wasn't a hand on my leg, it was teeth, dog teeth. Sparky, it's you! I cried, but my voice came out in a dry whisper. Sparky backed away. I cleared my throat and tried again. Don't be afraid, Sparky, it's only me, my voice. It sounded more like a dry cough. It sounded like my grandpa. I had an old man's face and an old man's voice, and I felt so tired, so totally weak and tired. As I reached to pet Sparky, my arms drooped, as if they weighed 1,000 pounds. Both of my knees cracked as I bent down. The dog gazed up at me and tilted his head. His short stub of a tail wagged furiously. Don't be scared, Sparky, I croaked. I was just trying to out this mask. Pretty scary, huh? I lowered my face and tried to pick Sparky up, but as I leaned forward, I could see the dog's eyes go wide with terror. Sparky let out a shrill yipe, jumped out of my hands, and went tearing across the room, barking at the top of his lungs, barking in total fright. Sparky, it's me, I cried. I know I sound different, but it's me, Steve. I wanted to chase after him, but my legs felt so weak and my knees refused to bend. It took me 3 tries to pull myself up to a standing position. My head ached. It was too out of breath to run after Sparky. Too late anyway. I could hear him barking his head off, already downstairs. Weird, I muttered, rubbing my aching back. I hobbled back to the mirror. Sparky had seen masks before. He knew it was me. Why was he so scared? Was it my weird voice? How had the mask dried up my voice, and why did I suddenly feel 110? At least my face no longer felt on fire, but the skin of the mask still pressed so tightly against my face I could barely move my lips. I have to get out of this thing, I decided. Chuck will have to wait until Halloween night to be scared out of his skull. I raised both hands to my neck and searched for the bottom of the mask. My mouth felt craggy and wrinkled. The skin was dry. Where was the bottom of the mask? I leaned close to the mirror on my closet door and narrowed my eyes at my reflection. I stared hard at the neck of the mask. Wrinkled skin flecked with ugly brown patches. But where was the bottom? Where did the mask end and my neck begin? My hands began to tremble as they fumbled up and down my throat. I could feel my heart begin to race. I moved my hands slowly, carefully up and down my neck. Again and again. Finally, I let my hands drop to my side and uttered a weary, frightened sigh. There was no mask bottom, no line at all between the mask and my neck. The wrinkled, spotted mask skin had become my skin. No, no, I wailed in my old man's voice. I had to get the thing off me. There had to be a way. I squeezed the cheeks of the mask and tugged with all my might. Ow! Sharp pain ran down my face. I pulled the hair. That sent a wave of pain shooting down my scalp. Frantically, I grabbed at the mask, slapped at it, pulled it, tore at it. I felt each move. Each slap and tug made my skin hurt. Every touch hurt me as if it were my own skin. The eye holes, I croaked. I reached for the eye holes. Maybe I could slip my fingers inside the eye holes and lift the mask off. My hands fumbled around my eyes. My trembling fingers searched, poking and rubbing. No eye holes. There were no eye holes. The rutted, scab-covered skin had melted onto me. It had become my skin. The ugly, disgusting mask had become my face. I looked horrifying, spider-infested, decaying old man, and I felt as old and weird as I looked. My throat tightened in terror. I sank against the mirror, pressing my ugly, craggy head against the glass. I shut my eyes. What can I do? What can I do? The question repeated like an unhappy chant in my mind. And then I heard the front door slam, and I heard Mom's voice at the bottom of the stairway. Steve, are you home, Steve? What can I do? What can I do? The question repeated and repeated. Steve, Mom called, come down here. I want to show you something. No, I thought, swallowing hard in my throat, making a clicking sound. No, I can't come down. I can't. I don't want you to see me like this. Oh, never mind, Mom called. I'm coming up there. I heard her footsteps on the stairs. A shock of panic made me lurch toward the door. I nearly fell over. My old legs were stiff, too stiff to move quickly. I hobbled to the door and closed it just as Mom reached the second floor. Then I leaned against the door and my hand on my throbbing chest, trying to catch my breath, trying to think, trying to decide what to say. I couldn't let her see me like this. I couldn't let her see the mask. She'd start asking questions, and I couldn't let her see how the mask had changed me. A few seconds later, she knocked gently on the door. Steve, are you in there? What are you doing? Nothing, Mom. Well, may I come in? I brought you something. Not right now, I croaked. Please don't open the door, I begged silently. Please don't come into my room. Steve, why do you sound so strange? Mom demanded. What's wrong with your voice? Think fast, Steve. Think fast. Sore throat, Mom. A really bad sore throat. Let me take a look at you. Are you sick? Glancing down, I saw the doorknob turn. No, I screamed, pressing my back against the door. You're not sick? I mean, yes, I croaked in my shaky old man voice. I'm not feeling well, Mom. I'm going to lie down for a while. I'll come down later, okay? I stared at the doorknob, listening to her breathing on the other side of the door. Steve, I brought you those black and white cookies that you love. Your favorites. Do you want one? Maybe it'll make you feel better. My stomach growled. Those cookies are my favorites. Dripping with chocolate icing on one side and vanilla icing on the other. Maybe later, I moaned. But I drove 2 miles out of my way to buy them for you, Mom said. Later, I'm really not feeling well. I was telling the truth. My temples throbbed. My whole body ached. I felt so weak I could barely stand up. I'll call you for dinner, Mom said. I listened to her make her way back down the stairs. Then I hobbled over to the bed and slumped my old man's body down onto the edge. Now what? I asked myself. I pressed my hands against my scabby cheeks. How do I get out of this thing? I shut my tired, burning eyes and tried to think. After a few minutes, Carly Beth's face floated into my mind. Yes, I croaked. Carly Beth is the one person in the world who can help me. Carly Beth wore a mask from the same store last Halloween. Maybe the same thing happened to her. Maybe her mask stuck to her face and changed her. She got her mask off. She will know how I can get my mask off, too. The phone stood across the room beside the computer on my desk. Normally I'd be over there in 3 seconds, but it took me 3 minutes of grunting and straining to get my old body to stand up. Then it took another 5 minutes to drag myself across the room. By the time I dropped into my desk chair, I was exhausted. It took all of my strength to raise my hand and punch in Carly Beth's number on the phone. I can't go on like this, I told myself. She's got to help me. She's got to know how to get this mask off. After the third ring, Carly Beth's father answered. Hello? Hi, could I speak to Carly Beth? I choked out. A silence. Then, who is this? Mr. Caldwell sounded confused. It's me, I answered. Is Carly Beth there? Is this one of her teachers? He demanded. No, it's Steve. I'm sorry, sir. I can't hear you very well. Can you speak up? Why did you wish to speak to my daughter? Perhaps I can help you. No, I heard Mr. Caldwell speak softly to someone else at his house. It's an old man asking for Carly Beth. I can barely hear him. He won't say who he is. He came back on the phone. Are you one of her teachers, sir? Where do you know my daughter from? She's my friend, I croaked. I heard him turn again to someone else in the room, probably Carly Beth's mom. He muffled the phone with his hand, but I heard what he said. I think it's a nut, some kind of crank call. He returned to me. Sorry, sir, my daughter cannot come to the phone. He hung up. I sat there listening to the buzz in my spider-filled ear. Now what? I asked myself. Now what? Chapter 18. I must have fallen asleep in the desk chair. I don't know how long I slept. I was awakened by Dad pounding on my bedroom door. "Steve, dinner time," he called in. I sat up with a start. My back ached from sitting up. I rubbed my wrinkled neck, trying to rub away the stiffness. "Steve, are you coming down to dinner?" Dad asked. I'm not hungry," I croaked. "I'm going to take a nap, Dad. I think I'm getting sick." "Hey, don't get sick the night before Halloween," he replied. "You don't want to miss out on trick-or-treating." I'll be okay," I stammered in my hoarse voice. "If I get a good night's sleep, I'll be fine." "Yeah, right. I'll be 150, but I'll be fine." I let out an unhappy sigh. "We'll bring you up some soup or something." Later, Dad called in. Then he disappeared downstairs. I stared at the phone. Should I try Carly Beth again? No, I decided. She won't believe it's me. She'll hang up the way her father did. I scratched my ears. I could feel the spiders crackling around in them. I touched the bare spot on the top of my head where the skin was ripped apart. The skin was soft and wet. I could feel the patch of hard skull that showed through. Oh, another long sigh. I've got to think. I told myself I've got to think of a way out of this. But I felt so weary, so sleepy. I pulled myself up and slumped to the bed. A few seconds later, I fell asleep. I awoke to bright sunlight streaming through my bedroom window. I blinked several times, startled by the bright morning light. Morning! Halloween morning! It should have been a happy day, an exciting day, but instead, I reached up with both hands and touched the sides of my face. Smooth! My cheeks felt smooth, soft and smooth. I rubbed my ears. Small ears, my ears, no spiders. I raised both hands to my head and touched my hair, not the stringy old man's hair. Hesitantly, carefully, I touched the torn spot on top of my head where the skull showed through. Not there. "I'm me again," I cried out loud. I let out a long whoop of joy. No old man's mask, no old man's voice, no old man's body. It had all been a dream, a horrible nightmare. Still blinking in the light, I gazed happily around my room. "I dreamed it all," I cried, going down to the dark store basement, pawing through the carton of masks, the man in the cape, the mask of the old man, sneaking it home and trying it on, the mask sticking to my skin, refusing to come off. All a dream. All a horrifying nightmare that was now over. I was so happy. This had to be the happiest moment of my life. I started to jump out of bed. I wanted to leap around my room to dance with joy. But then my eyes blinked open and I woke up for real. Chapter 19. I woke up for real and knew that I had only dreamed that it was all a dream. I grabbed my face and felt the craggy wrinkles, the heavy scabs. I rubbed my nose and brushed the green gobs stuck in my nostrils. I had dreamed that the mask didn't exist. I had dreamed that I had my own face back, my own voice and body. All a dream, a wonderful dream. But now I was really awake and really in trouble. I pulled myself up and brushed the stringy yellow hair out of my eyes. I have to tell Mom and Dad, I decided. I can't spend another day like this. I had slept in my clothes. I staggered to my feet and dragged my old body to the door. I tugged open the door and saw a note taped on the other side. "Dear Steve, hope you're feeling better. Mom and I had to go visit your Aunt Helen this morning. We left early to beat the traffic. We'll be home in time to help you with your hobo costume. Love, Dad." My hobo costume? Not this year. Besides, since I was now at least 150, I was a little old to go trick-or-treating. Crinkling the note in my hand, I made the long trip down to the kitchen, holding on to the banister, taking one step at a time. I had a sudden craving for a steaming bowl of oatmeal and a cup of hot milk. "Oh no," I croaked. I was starting to think like an old man. I made myself a breakfast of orange juice and cornflakes. I carried it to the table and sat down to eat. The juice glass felt strange against my fat brown lips, and it was almost impossible to chew the cornflakes with just one long crooked tooth. "What am I going to do?" I moaned out loud. Then suddenly I had an answer. I decided to go ahead with my plan to terrify the first graders. Why shouldn't I pay back those bratty kids for all the trouble they gave me day after day on the soccer field? Yes, I decided. When Mom and Dad got home, I'll greet them and show off my old man's costume. They won't know it isn't a costume. They'll think it's really cool. Then later, I'll go to the spooky old carpenter mansion to meet the kids, and I'll scare the first graders out of their masks. And then what? Then I'll find Carly Beth. It won't be hard to find her. She's having a Halloween party at her house after trick-or-treating. I'll find Carly Beth and get her to tell me the secret. I'll get her to show me how to remove this horrible mask. Then I will be a very happy guy. Sitting there alone in the kitchen, struggling to choke down my cornflakes, it seemed like a really good plan. Too bad it didn't work out that way, as I hoped. When Mom and Dad returned home that evening, I hobbled downstairs to greet them. They both gasped when they saw my ugly, scabby face. Mom dropped the bag she was carrying. Her mouth fell open to her knees. Dad's eyes bulged. He stared at me for a long time. Then he burst out laughing. "Steve, that is the best costume," he exclaimed. "Where did you get that?" "It's disgusting," Mom said. "Oh, I can't stand that open patch on top of his head and that horrible hole in your tooth." Dad walked in a circle around me, admiring my new look. I had put on the patched black suit and I wore as my hobo costume, and I had found one of my grandpa's old canes in the closet, which I leaned on now. "It's great," Dad declared, squeezing my shoulder. "I bought the mask at a party store," I croaked. It was almost the truth. Mom and Dad exchanged the glances. "The old man's voice is very good," Mom said. "Have you been practicing?" "Yes, all day," I replied. "Do you feel better?" Dad asked. "We didn't want to disturb you this morning since you weren't feeling good. Your mom and I had to leave so early. "I'm feeling much better," I lied. Actually, my legs were trembling and my whole body was drenched in a cold sweat. Feeling weak, I leaned harder on the cane. "Yuck, what's that in your hair?" Mom cried. "Spiders," I told her. I shuddered. I could feel them crawling over my head and my ears. "They're so real looking," Mom declared, raising a hand to her cheek. She shook her head. "Are you sure you don't want to be a hobo? That mask must be so hot and uncomfortable." If she only knew how uncomfortable it was. "Leave him be," Dad scolded her. "He looks great. He's going to terrify everyone on the street tonight." "I hope so," I thought. I glanced at my watch. Time to get going. "Well, he's terrifying me," Mom exclaimed. She shut her eyes. "I can't stand to look at you, Steve. Why did you buy something so ugly?" "I think it's funny," Dad told her. He poked a finger at my long tooth. "Great mask. Is it rubber?" "Yeah, I guess," I muttered in my quivering old voice. Mom made a disgusted face. "Are you trick-or-treating with Chuck?" I yawned. I suddenly felt sleepy. "I promised my soccer players I'd meet them," I croaked. "Then I'm going over to Carly Beth's house." "Well, don't stay out too late," Mom said. "And if that heavy mask gets too hot, take it off for a while, okay?" "I wish," I thought bitterly. "See you later," I said. Leaning on the cane, I began dragging myself to the front door. Mom and Dad laughed at my funny walk. I wasn't laughing. I wanted to cry. Only one thing kept me from breaking down and telling them the truth. Only one thing kept me from telling Mom and Dad that I was trapped inside this horrible mask and that it turned me into a weak, ancient creature. Revenge. I could see the terrified expressions on the faces of my soccer team, and I could hear their howls of horror as they went running for their lives. That cheered me up and kept me going. I grabbed the doorknob and struggled to pull open the front door. "Steve, wait," Dad cried. "My camera. Wait, I want to take a picture." He disappeared in search of the camera. "Your trick-or-treat bag," Mom cried. "You forgot your trick-or-treat bag." She rummaged around in the front closet until she found a shopping bag with little pumpkins all over both sides. I knew I couldn't manage the cane and the shopping bag, but I took it from her anyway. "I'll throw the bag away when I get outside," I decided. I didn't plan to trick-or-treat. I knew it would take me half an hour just to walk up someone's driveway. Dad burst back into the living room. "Say cheese," he cried, raising his little camera. I tried to twist my wormy lips into a smile. Dad flashed the camera once, then 3 more times. Blinded by flashlight bulbs, I said goodbye and made my way out the door. The white circles followed me into the night. I nearly fell off the front stoop. I grabbed the railing and waited for my heart to stop pounding. Slowly, the flashes of light faded from my eyes, and I began to pull myself down the driveway. It was a clear, cold night, no wind at all. The nearly bare trees stood as still as statues. I limped onto the sidewalk and started in the direction of the Carpenter mansion. There was no moon, but the street appeared brighter than usual. Most houses have all of their front lights on to welcome trick-or-treaters. I stuffed the shopping bag into a trash can at the foot of our neighbor's driveway. Then I continued down the block, my cane tapping on the sidewalk. My back began to ache. My old legs trembled. I leaned over the cane, breathing hard. After half a block, I had to take a rest against a lamp post. Luckily, the Carpenter mansion was on the next block. As I started on my way, two little girls came scurrying down the sidewalk, followed by their father. One wore colorful butterfly wings, the other wore lots of makeup, a gold crown, and long fancy dress. "Oh, he's ugly," the butterfly whispered to her friend as they came near. "Yuck," I heard the princess reply. "Look at the green stuff in his nose." I leaned close to them, opened my lips in a snarl, and rasped, "Get out of my way." The little girls both let out frightened squeals and took off down the sidewalk. Their father flashed me an angry stare and hurried after them. "Hee hee hee!" An evil cackle escaped my lips. Seeing their frightened faces gave me a new energy. Leaning on my cane, I tap-tapped my way across the street. A few minutes later, the Carpenter mansion came into view. The huge old house stood dark and empty. Its stone turrets rose up to the purple night sky like castle towers. Huddled under a street lamp at the bottom of the weed-choked front yard stood my soccer team, my hogs, my first graders, my victims. They were all in costumes. I saw Power Rangers and Ninja Turtles, mummies and monsters, two ghosts, a beauty and a beast. But I recognized them anyway. I recognized them because they were shoving each other, grabbing at trick-or-treat bags, shouting and fighting. I leaned against my cane, watching them from halfway down the block. My heart started to pound, my whole body trembled. This was it, my big moment. "Okay, guys," I murmured softly to myself, "it's showtime." Chapter 21. I was trembling with excitement as I dragged myself up to them. I stepped into the light, my wormy lips twisted in a frightening sneer. I stared from one to another, giving them a chance to see my terrifying face, giving them a chance to see the spiders crawling through my hair, the wormhole in my tooth, the patch of skull poking up through my rutted scalp. They grew quiet. I could feel their eyes on me. I could sense their instant fear. I opened my mouth to let out a frightening growl that would send them running for their mommies. But Marnie Rosen, wearing a white bride's dress and veil, stepped up to me before I could get it out. "Can we help you, sir?" she asked. "Are you lost?" one of the Power Rangers asked. "Do you need directions? Can we help you get somewhere?" No, this wasn't going right. This wasn't going the way I'd planned, the way I'd dreamed. Marnie took my arm. Which way were you headed, sir? We'll walk with you. It's kind of a scary night to be walking around a strange neighborhood." The others pushed in closer, trying to be helpful to an old man they weren't at least a bit scared of. "No," I howled in protest. "I'm the ghost of the Carpenter mansion. I've come to pay you back for trespassing on my front yard." I tried to shriek, but my voice came out in a weak whisper. I don't think they heard a word I uttered. "I've got to scare them," I told myself. "I've got to." I raised both hands together in the air as if I planned to strangle them all. My cane flew out of my grasp. I lost my balance and tottered over backwards. "Oh!" I let out a groan as I hit the sidewalk sitting up. They all cried out, but not in fear. They cried out because they were worried about me. Helping hands reached down to pull me to my feet. "Are you okay? Here's your cane." I recognized Duck Benton's scratchy voice. I heard murmurs of sympathy. "Poor old guy," someone whispered. "Are you hurt? Can we get you some help?" No. They weren't terrified. They weren't the tiniest bit afraid. I sank onto the cane. I suddenly felt so weary, so totally exhausted I could barely keep my head up. "Forget about scaring them, Steve," I told myself. "You've got to get to Carly Beth's house before you collapse. You've got to find out from Carly Beth how to get the mask off, how to get your old face and strength back." Marnie was still holding on to my trembling arm. Where are you going? Are you trying to go?" she asked, her freckled face filled with concern. Do you know where Carly Beth Caldwell's house is?" I asked in a weak croak. "It's on the next block, across the street. I know her brother," I heard Andrew Foster say. "We'll take you there," Marnie offered. She gripped my arm tighter. A mummy stepped up and took my other arm. They began to walk me slowly, gently down the sidewalk. "I don't believe this," I thought bitterly. "They're supposed to be scared out of their costumes. They should be shrieking and crying by now. But instead, they're helping me walk." I sighed. The sad thing was, I felt so tired and weak, I couldn't have made it to Carly Beth's without their help. They led me halfway up her driveway. Then I thanked them and told them I would make it the rest of the way. I watched them scurry away to go trick-or-treating. I guess Steve isn't going to show up, Duck said. He was probably too big a wimp to go out on Halloween night, Marnie joked. They all laughed. Leaning heavily on the cane, I turned toward Carly Beth's house. The lights were all on, but I couldn't see anyone in the windows. She probably isn't back from trick-or-treating yet, I decided. I heard chattering voices, footsteps on the gravel drive. I wheeled around to see Carly Beth and her friend Sabrina Mason hurrying across the lawn, heading toward the house. I recognized Carly Beth's duck costume. She wore it every year, except for last Halloween when she wore that terrifying mask. Sabrina was kind of a superhero. She wore silvery tights and a long silvery cape. She had a silvery mask pulled over her face, but I recognized her long black hair. Carly Beth, I tried to shout, but her name came out as a choked whisper. She and Sabrina kept chattering excitedly as they hurried across the lawn. Carly Beth, please, I cried. Halfway to the house, they both turned. They saw me. Yes? Carly Beth, I cried. She pulled off her duck mask and took a few steps toward the driveway. She squinted hard at me. Who are you? It's me, I cried weakly. Are you the man who tried to call me earlier? She demanded coldly. Well, yes, I croaked. You see, Well, leave me alone, Carly Beth screamed. Why are you following me? Leave me alone or I'll get my father. But, I sputtered helplessly. The two girls spun away and began jogging to the house, leaving me standing there in the driveway, leaving me all alone, leaving me doomed. Chapter 22. I let out a bitter wail. Carly Beth, it's me, Steve, I cried. Steve Boswell. Did she hear me? Yes. She and Sabrina had stepped onto the stone walk that led to the front porch. In the square of yellow light from the porch, I saw them both turn around. It's Steve. It's Steve, I repeated, my throat aching from my desperate cries. Slowly, cautiously, both girls made their way back to me. Steve? Carly Beth stared hard at me, her mouth falling open. Is that a mask? Sabrina demanded, keeping close to Carly Beth. Yes, it's a mask, I croaked. Yuck, it's disgusting, Sabrina declared. She pulled off her silver mask to see better. Are those spiders? Yuck. I need help, I confessed. This mask... You went to the party store, Carly Beth cried. The dusk mask fell to the ground. She raised both hands to the sides of her face. Oh, no. No, Steve, I warned you. Yes, that's where I got it, I said, pointing to my hideous face. I didn't listen to you. I didn't know. Steve, I told you not to go there, Carly Beth said, her expression still tight with horror, hands still pressed against her cheeks. Now the mask won't come off, I wailed. It's stuck to me. It's part of me, and it's turning me into an old man, a feeble old man. Carly Beth shook her head sadly. She stared at my ugly face but didn't say a word. You've got to help me, I pleaded. You've got to help me get this mask off. Carly Beth let out a frightened sigh. Steve, I don't think I can. Chapter 23. I grabbed her duck feathers and held on. You've got to help me, Carly Beth, I begged. Why won't you help me? I want to help you, she explained, but I'm not sure I can. But you had a mask from the same store last Halloween, I protested. You pulled the mask off. You escaped from it, right? It can't be pulled off, Carly Beth said. There's no way to pull it off. Over her shoulder, I saw 3 kids in costumes at the next house. A woman appeared in the doorway. I saw her dropping candy into the 3 trick-or-treat bags. Some kids are having fun tonight, I thought bitterly. I am not having fun tonight. I may never have fun again. Come into the house, Carly Beth suggested. It's cold out here. I'll try to explain. I tried to follow them up the driveway, but my legs wobbled like rubber. Carly Beth and Sabrina practically had to carry me into her house. They dropped me down on the green leather couch in the living room. On a table across the room, a carved jack-o'-lantern grinned at me. The pumpkin had more teeth than I did. Carly Beth dropped down on the couch arm. Sabrina sat on the edge of the armchair beside it. She leaned over and sifted through her trick-or-treat bag. How could she think of candy at a time like this? I turned to Carly Beth. How do I get the mask off? I croaked. Carly Beth chewed her bottom lip. She raised her eyes to me, her expression grim. It isn't a mask, she said softly. Excuse me? I cried. It isn't a mask, she explained. It's a real face, a living face. Did you meet the man in the black cape? I nodded. He's some kind of weird scientist, I think. He made the faces in his lab. He made them? I stammered. Carly Beth nodded solemnly. They are real, living faces. The man in the cape tried to make them good-looking, but something went wrong. They all came out ugly as the one you're wearing. "But Carly Beth," I cried. She raised a hand to hush me. "The caped man calls the faces the unloved. No one wants them because they turned out so ugly. They are the unloved. They're alive, and they attach themselves to anyone who comes near enough." "But how do I get it off?" I cried impatiently. I raised my hands and tugged at my rutted, scabby cheeks. "I can't spend the rest of my life like this. What can I do?" Carly Beth jumped up and began pacing back and forth in front of Sabrina and me. Sabrina unwrapped a Milky Way bar and began chewing it, watching Carly Beth pace. "The same thing happened to me last Halloween," Carly Beth said. "I had chosen a really ugly mask. It was so scary. It attached itself to my head, and then it turned me evil." "And what did you do?" I cried, leaning forward on my cane. "I went back to the party store. I found the man in the cape. He told me there was only one way to get rid of the mask. It could only be done with a symbol of love." "Huh?" I gaped at her. I didn't understand. I had to find a symbol of love. Carly Beth continued. "At first I didn't know what the man meant. I didn't know what to do, but then I remembered something my mom had made for me." "What?" I demanded eagerly. "What was it?" "It was that head," Sabrina chimed in, her mouth bulging with chocolate. "My mom had sculpted a head of me," Carly Beth said. "It looked just like me. You've seen it. My mom sculpted it because she loves me. It was a symbol of love." Carly Beth dropped back down beside me. I placed Mom's sculpted head over the unloved face, and the unloved disappeared. The ugly face slipped right off. "Great!" I cried happily. "Go get it! Hurry!" "Huh?" Carly Beth stared at me confused. "Go get the sculpted head," I begged. "I've got to get this thing off me." Carly Beth shook her head. "You don't get it, Steve. You can't use my symbol of love. It will only work for me. You have to find your own symbol of love." "But maybe it won't work for Steve's mask," Sabrina interrupted. "Maybe each mask is different." "Give me a break, Sabrina," I muttered angrily. "It's got to work. Don't you understand? It's got to." "You have to find your own symbol of love," Carly Beth repeated. "Can you think of one, Steve?" I stared back at her, thinking hard. I thought and thought. Symbol of love, symbol of love. No, I couldn't think of anything, not a single thing. And then an idea popped into my mind. Chapter 24. I leaned on the cane and tried to pull myself up from the couch, but my feeble arms gave way, and I fell back into the cushion. "You've got to help me get home," I told Carly Beth. "I thought of a symbol of love. It's at my house." "Okay, let's go," she replied. "But what about the kids coming over here?" Sabrina asked, swallowing a chunky Milky Way. "But what about the party?" "You stay here and greet them," Carly Beth told her. "If Steve really can find a symbol of love at his house, and if it works, we'll be all right, and we'll be right back." "It'll work," I said. "I know it will." But I had my fingers crossed, which made it harder to climb up the couch from the couch. Carly Beth saw me struggling. She took both my hands and pulled me to her feet. "Yuck. What are those things moving around in your ears?" she cried, making a disgusted face. "Spiders," I said quietly. She swallowed hard. "I sure hope you find something that works." "Me too," I murmured as she guided me back to the door. Carly Beth turned back into the living room. "Don't eat all the chocolate while we're gone," she told Sabrina. Carly Beth turned back into the living room. "It's only my second piece," Sabrina protested with her mouth full. We stepped into the darkness. Some kids in costumes were coming up the driveway, all carrying bulging trick-or-treat bags. "Hey, Carly Beth, where are you going?" a girl called. "I'm doing a good deed," Carly Beth replied. "See you guys later." She turned back to me. "I can't believe you didn't listen to me, Steve. You really look disgusting." "I can't even wipe the green gobs out of my nose," I wailed. Holding me by the shoulder, she guided me toward my house. We crossed the street onto my block. I heard kids laughing and loud music inside the house on the corner. A Halloween party. As we passed the house, I stumbled over a moving shadow. Carly Beth caught me before I fell. "What was that?" I cried. Then I saw it scamper silently across the street. A black cat. I laughed. What else could it be? I had to laugh. "Go ahead, cat," I thought bitterly. "Go ahead and cross my path. I couldn't have any worse luck, could I?" My house came into view past a row of tall evergreen shrubs. Through the shrubs I could see that nearly all the downstairs lights were on. "Are your parents home?" Carly Beth asked, helping me across the grass. I nodded. "Yeah, they're home." "Do they know about the No," I replied. "They think it's a costume." As we stepped onto the front stoop, I could hear Sparky start to bark inside the house. I pushed open the door and the little dog let out an excited yipe and leaped up at me. His paws landed on my waist and pushed me back hard. I toppled against the wall. Down, Sparky, please get down, I pleaded in my old man's croak. I knew Sparky was glad to see me, but I was too feeble for his usual greeting. Down, boy, please. Carly Beth finally managed to pull the dog off me so that I could stand up. Then she held onto Sparky until I regained my balance. Steve, is that you? I heard Mom call from the den. You're back so early. Mom stepped into the living room. She had changed into the gray flannel house dress she usually relaxes in at night, and she had her blonde hair in curlers. Oh, hi, Carly Beth, she cried in surprise. I wasn't expecting visitors. That's okay, Mom, I croaked. We're only staying a minute. We came back to get something. Don't you love Steve's costume? Mom asked Carly Beth. Isn't that the most horrible mask you've ever seen? Don't you? You mean he's wearing a mask? Carly Beth joked. She and Mom enjoyed a good laugh. Sparky sniffed my shoes. What did you come back for? Mom asked me. Those black and white cookies, I replied eagerly. You know, the ones you brought me yesterday. Those cookies were a symbol of love. Mommy told me how she drove 2 miles out of her way to buy them for me. She knew they were my favorite cookies in the whole world, and she drove out of her way to buy them because she loves me. So the cookies were the perfect symbol of love. I couldn't wait to bite into one. One bite, I knew, and I'll be able to pull off this horrible mask. Mom's face twisted in surprise. She narrowed her eyes, studying me. You came back here for those cookies? Why, what about all your trick-or-treat candy? Well, I stammered. My brain stalled. I couldn't think of a good reason. He had a strong craving, Carly Beth chimed in. He told me he's been thinking about those cookies all night. That's right. I had a craving, I repeated. Candy bars can't compare, Mom. Those cookies are the best. I love them too, Carly Beth added, so I came back with Steve. Wanted to bring them to my Halloween party. Mom tisk. What a shame, she said. Huh? I cried, feeling my heart skip a beat. What do you mean? What's wrong? Mom shook her head. The cookies are gone, she replied softly. The dog found the box this morning and broke into it. I'm sorry, guys, but Sparky ate them all. 25. Mom's words sent a cold shiver down my neck, and I let out a weak moan and stared down at Sparky. The dog gazed up at me and began wagging his stubby tail as if he were pleased with himself. You've ruined my life, Sparky. That's what I felt like screaming. You greedy pig. Couldn't you save me just one cookie? Now I'm doomed. Doomed to live with this gross, frightening face forever. And all because Sparky loved black and white cookies as much as I did. Still wagging his tail, Sparky ran over to me and brushed his furry black body against my leg. He wanted to be petted. Forget it, I thought. No way I'm petting you, you traitor. I heard Dad calling Mom from the den. Have fun, guys, Mom said. She waved to Carly Beth and me and hurried off to see what Dad wanted. Have fun, guys. I'm never going to have fun again, I realized. Feeling weak and defeated, I turned to Carly Beth. Now what do? I whispered. Quick, pick up Sparky, she whispered back, motioning to the dog with both hands. Huh? Do what? I'm never touching this dog again, I croaked miserably. Panting hard, his tongue hanging to the floor, Sparky brushed my ankle again. Pick him up, Carly Beth insisted. Why? Sparky is your symbol of love, Carly Beth declared. Look at him, Steve. Look how much that dog loves you. He loves me so much he ate all my cookies, I wailed. Carly Beth frowned at me. Forget about the cookies. Pick up the dog. Sparky is your symbol of love. Pick him up and hold him against you, and I'll bet that mask will come right off. I guess it's worth a try, I said softly. I started to pick up the little black terrier. My back creaked as I bent down. My aching knees cracked. Please work, I pleaded silently. Please let this work. I reached for Sparky, and he darted through my hands and ran across the carpet toward the den. Sparky, come back, Sparky, I cried, still bent over, still reaching out both hands. The dog stopped halfway across the living room and turned back. Come back, Sparky, I called in my old man's quivering voice. Come back, boy, come back to Steve. His stubby tail started wagging again. He stared at me, head tilted, and didn't move. He's playing games with me, I told Carly Beth. He wants me to chase him. I got down on my knees and motioned to Sparky with both hands. Come on, boy. Come on, I'm too old to chase you. Come, Sparky. To my surprise, the dog let out a yipe, ran back across the room, and jumped into my arms. Hug him tight, Steve, Carly Beth urged. Hug him tight. It's going to work. I know it will. The little dog felt so heavy in my weak, aching arms, but I held him against my chest, held him tight, held him as tight as I could, held him for a long time, and nothing happened. After about a minute, the dog got tired of being squeezed. He jumped out of my arms, bounced over the carpet, and disappeared into the den. I tugged at the mask with both hands, but I knew I was wasting my strength. It didn't feel any different. Nothing had changed. The hideous face was still tightly attached to my head. Carly Beth put a gentle hand gently on my shoulder. Sorry, she murmured. I guess each mask is different. You mean I need something else to get it off? I said, shaking my old spider-infested head sadly. Carly Beth nodded. Yes, something else, but we don't know what it is. I uttered a helpless cry. I'm doomed, I wailed. I can't even climb off my knees. Carly Beth slid both of her hands under my shoulders and lifted me to my feet. I steadied myself, leaning on the cane, and then I had an idea. The man in the cape, I croaked. He'll know what I can do. You're right, Carly Beth's face brightened. Yes, you're right, Steve. He helped me last Halloween. If we go back to the party store, I know he'll help you. She started to pull me to the front door, but I held back. There's just one little problem, I told her. She turned back to me. Problem? Yeah, I replied. I forgot to tell you the party store is closed. It went out of business. We walked there anyway. Well, I didn't exactly walk. I limped and hobbled, feeling weaker and more feeble every second. Carly Beth practically had to carry me. The street stood empty, glimmering dimly under the rows of street lamps. Lights were going out in all the houses. It was pretty late. All of the trick-or-treaters had gone home. 2 dogs followed us down the street, big German shepherds. Maybe they thought we'd share our Halloween candy with them, of course. I didn't have any Halloween candy. Go away, I snarled at them. I don't like dogs anymore. Dogs are useless. To my surprise, they seemed to understand. They turned and went loping across the dark front lawn, disappearing around the side of the house. A few minutes later, we passed the row of small shops and stepped up in front of the party store. Dark, empty, out of business, I murmured. I think my phone is going to die, so I'm probably going to let me just finish this chapter, and then we'll have to finish the last 2 in continuing. Out of business, I murmured. Carly Beth pounded on the front door. I peered into the blue shadows beyond the dusty front window. Nothing moved. No one in there. Open up! We need help! Carly Beth shouted. She banged on the wooden door with both fists. Silence inside. No one stirred. A cold wind swept down the street. I shivered. I tried to bury my ugly head in my shoulders. Let's go, I mumbled, defeated, doomed. Carly Beth refused to give up. She pounded the door with both fists. I turned away from the window and gazed at the alley beside the door. Whoa, wait, I called to her. Come over here. I dragged myself to the alley. Carly Beth followed. She rubbed her knuckles. I guess they were sore from pounding so hard on the door. I could see from the sidewalk that the trap door was shut, but I led Carly Beth into the alley. We stopped beside the trap door. It leads into the basement of the party store, I explained. All the masks and other stuff are down there. If we can get down there, Carly Beth whispered, maybe we can find a way to help you. Maybe, I whispered back. Carly Beth bent down and grabbed the wire handle to the trap door. She tugged it up hard. The door didn't budge. I think it's locked, she groaned. Try again, I urged. It sticks. It's very hard to open. She bent down, grasped the handle in both hands, and pulled again. This time the door swung open, revealing the concrete stairs that led down to the basement. Come on, hurry, Steve. Let's go. Carly Beth tugged my arm. My last chance, I thought. This is my last chance. Trembling, I followed her down into the heavy darkness. We'll have to pick up chapter 27 when we return in a few minutes.